Hello. Shall I say
Good evening,
bonsoir?
Richard. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. Ooh, ooh, sorry
Good
about
evening,
that.
everyone.
I just knocked my headphones out. Welcome, and thank you everyone for tuning into this Your Overseas Home webinar on finding and buying the right property in northern France. My name is Richard Way from Your Overseas Home, and I'm hosting the session. It's great to have you all with us, whether you're watching live or you might be watching the recorded version, which is available through our YouTube page, the Your Overseas Home YouTube page. So northern France, by which we mean Normandy and Brittany, two regions that stand out from the rest of France for their dramatic coastline, their ancient fishing towns and villages, rolling often wild interior, quite distinct culture and cuisine, think seafood, cider and crepes, and its charming rustic, if you like, earthy lifestyle. It has a charm that's attracted British property buyers for decades, as well as other foreign buyers. But what's it like to go house hunting there? And how do you choose where exactly to buy and what type of property and how to avoid costly mistakes? It's a large area, the two regions, with a diverse range of homes and locations and, of course, price points. So getting the right first-hand advice, speaking to people with excellent on-the-ground knowledge is an absolute must, which is precisely why we'll be talking to today's specialist speaker, who is Sheila Gorham, who is CEO and co-founder of one of France's most established estate agencies serving foreign buyers in northern France, but I know they also sell in other regions further south. Sheila's kindly agreed to talk to us today. So if you're serious and ready to take the next step towards buying in Brittany or Normandy, she and her company, Agence Newton, could be the people to make that happen. Hello, Sheila. Nice to have you with us.
Good evening, Richard. Good evening, everybody. I hope you've all had a good day. Firstly, I must apologise if you hear any background noise, but we're in the middle of a big thunderstorm here. And so if you suddenly hear loud rumbles, that's what it is.
Just quickly, we've got 30 minutes for this session. We can go over a bit. It's question and answer format.
Yep, no problem.
I'm going to be asking questions to Sheila. The idea is to cover off the main points, the things we think are the main points, but also would love to hear from people who are watching live. And you can ask a question direct to Sheila by using the questions tool, which you should see on your dashboard. If you just open it up, type the question in there, and I'll make sure Sheila gets a chance to answer it. Otherwise, that's it from me. I will quickly say before we start, we're not going to focus too much on locations in this session because we've done a previous one, which you can get on the Your Overseas Home YouTube page, focusing more about the locations. We'll touch on them, but this is more about the process and how to identify the right property and how you work with people like Sheila to navigate the buying process to a successful conclusion. Okay, let's get started. Firstly, Sheila, would you like to just give us a very quick introduction to yourself and your experience in France and background to the company Agence Newton?
Yep, of course, yeah. So I've lived in France in Normandy for 20 years, and I've actually been selling houses for 18 of those 20 years. So I like to think I know Normandy pretty well. Lower Normandy, this is. I don't know Upper Normandy so much. So I became the co-owner of the company back in 2014, and we've grown it to have agents covering predominantly most of Western France.
Okay, lots of years of experience there, and I'm imagining you've helped hundreds or thousands, I'm sure, of British and foreign people find a home in France, in Normandy. Okay, let's just start with some context. I mentioned how it's quite distinct, the two regions. They are in the north of France. They don't get the same heat as the south. It's not the Mediterranean lifestyle. So who are your typical buyers at the moment? What makes people from the UK? I know that's probably your biggest foreign market, but there are other people as well. But what makes them want to choose that region?
I think predominantly for ease of access back to the UK. So we've obviously got the ferry ports in both Normandy and Brittany. Some clients, especially if they're coming over with pets, will drive through the tunnel and then drive down to the area. So I do think location plays a great part, not just for English and British, but also the Irish. It's easy for them to come across too. So location. If you'd have asked me a few weeks ago, I would have said the climate's significantly better than in the south, but I don't think we can say that anymore after all the heat waves we've all had, and I know you've had too. But generally, the climate is more favourable in Normandy, Brittany, than it is the extreme heat that we're used to in the south.
Yeah. And what about price? I don't know if it used to be, but is it deemed a little bit more affordable than the very south? Obviously,
certainly more affordable than the very south. I think the most reasonably priced properties are in the middle of France. So if you're looking for a particularly cheaper property, then a lot of people look around the Haute-Vienne, Limoges area. Normandy, Brittany, like the UK, the closer you are to the coast, the more the price goes up. However, compared to UK prices, they're still extremely reasonable.
Okay. And what is the typical spend at the moment with your UK clients? What do they kind of range between?
Typical spend for me, I am finding more clients are moving here permanently and becoming resident rather than looking for holiday homes. And so I would say my average spend at the moment is probably about 250,000 for a typical 3-4 bed stone house in the countryside.
Wow.
There are obviously there are cheaper properties and there are much more expensive ones, but the average at the moment, mortgage free, is about 250.
Actually, that does sound like good value from a UK point of view, certainly south of UK. Yeah.
Totally, yeah. Coming from the south of UK myself, I don't think I could afford to move back.
No. Okay, great. Right, let's start the process now of finding a property, so people know that they want Brittany or Normandy. They've decided that's right. So the first thing to do really is find an agent like yourself, Agence Newton, and make contact. What is it that you guys offer? I mean, that you won't necessarily get if you went into a French estate agency in this high street somewhere. I mean, because you are geared up to helping foreign people, aren't you?
We are indeed. I think a lot of people, when they first start looking, they don't know exactly where they want to be. So I'll quite often say to people, come over, spend time looking around the areas to get a feel for what you like. If at that point you want to meet up and have a cup of coffee and a chat, that's absolutely fine. There's no obligation. But sometimes it's good if you've made that initial contact. So then we get more of a feel of what you're looking for. You get to know us a little bit and you get to know the areas. Because I think when you've defined the area, then it's easier to find the property. But we can have a coffee, we can have a chat, we can talk you through the process again, because it's an awful lot to remember. And we always provide for all of the signings a court-sworn translator, so therefore you haven't got to worry about the language. And I think the French high street agents, it's not quite so straightforward if you're not very good at French.
Well, I mean, that's a huge benefit, isn't it? Obviously, the language.
Definitely.
The English-speaking agent. So also, I mean, for people who really are just starting out and they maybe aren't at the point, or they're not available to come to France, presumably they could contact you after watching this, for example, and you would then do a FaceTime or a call with them? And
happy to do. Yeah, we use WhatsApp an awful lot, so we do WhatsApp lives. Not just for a hello, how are you chat, but sometimes if somebody has fallen in love with the property, but due to various commitments, they can't get over straight away, we can arrange to do a WhatsApp live tour. And then based on that, then they can think, okay, I can, I'll come over and see it in real life. Or maybe they see something during that tour that actually, no, I'm not so keen on that bit. So they've not wasted costs on the ferry or the channel to come over. It's not something we do every day, but it does help people when they're not already in France and they want a better idea.
Sure. And when you first talk to potential clients, and you'll build up a profile of them, you're
Yep,
going to need certain bits of information from them, aren't you? Which are going to
most certainly. So
you're going to
I
need. So what are those bits of information so people know, listening, watching now, they can start writing
so
those things
the
down?
most important thing in their criteria is more of what they don't want rather than what they do want. I think, most people will say, well, we don't want a property on a main road, or we don't want a property with 100 acres. And I think so the don't wants are more important. And then we then have, what we would like. Yes, we would like 3 bedrooms. Yes, we would like a stone fireplace, for example, or whatever the criteria is. And then we would say, okay, if we find you something, where would you make the compromise on that? If you love the house, but it hasn't got a stone fireplace, is that a deal breaker?
Yeah.
So we can build a good picture of the sort of property that they would like and the amount of work that somebody might want to do on a property. I'm finding more and more that clients want to walk in and maybe do decorating, maybe update a bathroom, but very, very few people now want to be involved in renovation projects or lots of work. I think, that's people have moved more away from that and now want
Mm,
to be able to live in the house from day one. Once we've established that, then obviously the most important question is going to be your budget. And
yeah.
if the finance is available, or if you need to sell something first before you can then buy over here, and what stage you were at in selling your own property, if that's what you need to do. Because there are some agents that, especially the French agents, if you're not in a position to buy, then they won't take you to a viewing.
Right.
So it's worth
And
bearing in mind to have your ducks in a row to start with.
will you need to have proof of funds at that point, or not
It
necessarily?
it depends. I tend to, if it's if it's a luxury property, I will ask for proof of funds before I will take the client to view that property,
Mhm.
because that's just, it's important for the
Yeah.
sellers as well. If it's a property that I know the property well, or I've got the keys for the property, then if somebody says to me, well, we've sold our house in the UK, we're on our way. Okay, that's okay, that's fine.
There's proper commitment there. Yeah.
Yes.
Um, okay, so let's just look at the steps involved closer, a bit more closely. So you've spoken to clients, they've given you all the information you've just talked about, perhaps by WhatsApp or FaceTime. And then what happens? Will you then go and find properties that match their profile and send them to them, and then they will say, right, I'm ready to come and look at these ones?
I
Is that
would
really how?
I would give suggestions, however, because obviously what I show them now in a month's time may not be available. So once
Mm,
we've got dates in the diaries for viewings, a week beforehand, we'll talk to the clients and say, okay, well, that one is no longer available. However, this one's just come on the market, and we can draw up a short list for them to actually visit.
yeah.
Because, sometimes a property can sell in 3 days before you've even had chance to get the ferry, but then there are others that obviously are available for longer. So I think it's really important to book your viewing trip as early as you can, but then review just before you come over what is actually available for you to view on that visiting trip.
Yeah. And just tell us how your viewing trips work with Agence Newton, or with yourself, for example. I mean, how many days do most people come for? How many properties is a sensible amount to try and view without bombarding
Most
yourself?
people will only come for sometimes a weekend. They might arrive on a Friday and go back on the Sunday night, if they're
Yeah.
working. Sometimes people will come for a week to explore on that as well. I personally wouldn't show more than 3 properties in one day, because I think they
Hmm.
tend to then all get muddled in with each other, and you can't think, oh, well, was that garden with that one or with that one? And I think it's quite tiring, and there's quite often quite a long drive between properties. We're a very big area here, and
Yeah.
it's not like in the UK that you might go 2 minutes around the corner. You might be an hour up the road. I always try to plan into the day a coffee stop so that we can sit, we can chat, and it's not all rush, rush, rush. You know, we need to try and make the day enjoyable for you too. So yeah, don't try and cram 6 or 7 properties into one day, because they'll all just mush into one and you won't remember which is which. So we would meet you depending on where you're staying. I would personally normally arrange to meet the client either where they're staying or somewhere close to where they're staying. I'll often take them in my car, unless it's a big family with, you know, lots of dogs, because then they can see the countryside as they're driving, you know, with me, rather than concentrating on the road, concentrating on following me and maybe not keeping up even.
Yeah.
So
and it's a good time. That time in the car is a good time as well to ask questions, isn't it?
Totally.
And
But it
pick your
also
brains about the area.
It's as we're driving along, I can point things out and I can say, well, this happens here. If you go there, that's where you go for that. And so try and make it more interesting and more informative for the buyers.
Yeah. And just while we're working with the agent, do most of your clients only work with you or one agent? Is because, I mean, presumably you can go around and scout any properties that will fit their criteria. And obviously you're English speaking, you're specialist in working with foreign buyers, so that really you would advise a client to only work with you, and it will save confusion of having different agents involved. Is that how most of your clients?
Yes, they do. However, there are always going to be a couple of properties that maybe we haven't got access to if they've signed a sole agency for 3 months with a French agency. So in that case, if I know the French agency, I can introduce the client to them and help them. But there are occasions when I don't recognize a property with another agent and it's a sole agency, and I say, look, I'm really sorry, but I don't know it and I can't help you on this one. You're going to have to contact the agent directly.
Yeah.
But as a general rule, we try to find the client exactly what they're looking for.
Everything.
Yeah.
Yeah, much simpler. Just going through.
It is, and we get to know the buyer, and then after we've done viewings, we get a feel, because quite often the criteria can change. And as an example, I've had somebody that said they wanted to be within walking distance of a boulangerie, and then they bought something about 2 kilometers outside of the village. Because their criteria changed as we were going around, and so that's interesting to see. People don't always want what they thought they wanted.
Once you get there and see everything,
exactly,
you know, in situ, and you're and linked to that, actually, one of my questions I want to ask is, do the expectations of your clients when they first come and view properties, is it you normally exceed their expectations?
I think
I'm thinking when you mentioned 250,000 is a good budget for
one thing we do as well. One thing we do as well is we take most of the properties. I'll do a video tour, so I can send the client a copy of the video before they've come over.
Okay.
So hopefully then when they come over, they can see that what they're seeing is the same as in the video. The only times I can't provide a video is there are very rare occasions when the house is in such a mess that to take a video of it isn't going to do it any favors. You know the typical hoarder type house, and you just can't. So, but I will explain to the client that I'm really sorry, I can't do a video of this one. It's not ready for filming at the moment, tactfully. Okay. So you.
Can you hear me, Sheila? Can you hear me? I can't hear you. I'm not sure what's. Are you there? Oh, you're back. You're back.
I'm back.
Hello. You're back. Yeah, we lost you there for a minute.
All right. I'm back.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, you're gone. maybe that thunderstorm has struck. We're just going to wait. Sorry about this. I'm hoping that Sheila, there she is. She's coming back right now. It's the perils of living in rural Normandy. You see,
it is, yeah, and it's really kicking off out there.
Wow.
The one surprise I think for a lot of clients is the size of the land. And when we say something's got, for example, a hectare, which is 2.5 acres, people can't always comprehend how big that actually is.
Yeah.
And so clients are surprised by how big a garden or the land can actually be. And so I think that's quite important when you're thinking of the type of property you want. It's great to have all this land, but what are you going to do with it?
Yeah. And it needs maintaining, of course. Yeah.
And quite a few people after a few years downsize to something with less land.
Oh, that's interesting.
So yeah,
great.
That's what one sort of little tip.
That's a good one. Okay, back to the actual process. So your client comes out, they do viewings with you.
Yep.
And they get to the moment of magic happens, and they see the property they want.
Fall in love.
Next thing you'll
Yep.
fall in love. So obviously they need to make an offer and negotiate with the vendor. I'm guessing you'll help them with that. You'll drive that.
Most definitely.
Negotiations. Yeah.
So you'll make an offer. Your offer will include agency fees, which is good for me. But in addition, you will need to base notaires fees on 8%, and we'll come back to that. But all I'm thinking, when you're considering your offer, bear in mind that there is more to pay on top. You'll make your offer. Yeah. I would obviously put it to the vendors. Quite often we'll have a pretty good idea of what they'll agree on. And the days of knocking a third off are long gone. You sometimes see on, some of these Facebook posts, oh, I knocked a third off. Not anymore. You would actually be insulting the vendor. So you've made your offer. We've got it accepted. I would then make an appointment with the notaire for the first signing, which quite simply you would probably call exchange of contracts.
Up until that point, you don't sign anything up until that point. There's no reservation deposit.
You can sign what we call an offre d'achat, which is confirming your offer, but that's all in French. So sometimes it can be used, but not always. It's there's an element of trust with everybody as well, as you can appreciate. I would send you a formal email asking you for clear scanned copies of your passports, your birth certificates, your marriage certificate, any details of any previous marriages, be they death or divorce. The reason for that is because the notaire wants to know when they're writing in the deed that no exes are going to come out of the woodwork and try and make a claim on the property. We would want your home address. We would want your occupation, your email, and your mobile phone number, although we would probably already have that. But for each person that's buying, so if you're buying as a couple, I need all that information for both of you. Okay. We would also have so we would put the same sort of dossier together for the vendors. We would get all the diagnostics done, which we will come on to. And then we would present this dossier to the notaire, and we would get a date for you to come and do the first signing, which is generally in August. You can wait a while because they're all on holiday, but generally 2 to 3 weeks after your offer has been accepted. So the notaire would also ask for a 10% deposit. That would be sent directly to the notaire. That's standard these days. Don't pay any money to any agent anywhere. You have to pay it to a notaire. Okay. The notaire would then, we would all come along, we would sign. You would then be sent via each of your email addresses a copy of what you've just signed. Once that comes into your inbox, the notaire would get notification, and it would trigger a 10-day cooling off period. During that 10 days, you can cancel the sale if you want to without reason, but you would have to put it in writing to the notary. But you don't have to say why, and then they would automatically return your 10%. After the 10 days, you're then totally committed, and unless you have what we would call a suspensive clause, which could be subject to satisfactory mortgage, for example, you would then lose your 10% if you didn't complete the sale.
Mm-hmm.
If you have added a specific clause, then you didn't get the mortgage, for example, you would prove you hadn't got the mortgage, therefore you would get your 10% back. But the clauses that are added have to be recognised by the notaire. It can't just be a clause to say something like, well, if they paint the walls green, then I'm, not buying it, the sort of thing. It has to be recognised clauses. The notaire would then, we would have checked all of the planning permissions to make sure that any work they'd done had the correct permissions if it was required. If there's a swimming pool, we have to check the permissions for that, and we have to check that it's got a secure barrier around it. If you're buying a property with a lake, that is a whole different ball game. And there are lots of rules and regulations now with buying lakes. And we will not let you buy a property with a lake if it hasn't got all the correct permissions, because you could have what I would call the water police, for want of a better description. If it hasn't got the correct permissions, the water police could come and get you to drain the lake. So
you don't want to have to do that, right?
No. So buyer beware, if you are buying anything with a lake, make sure it's imperative you make sure it's got all the correct permissions. Okay, but we'll help you with that. But it is important. Okay, so then we've come to the first signing. At that first signing, we'll decide a completion date, which is generally 2 months after the first signing. The reason for 2 months is the notaire has to refer your garden or your land to a government agricultural board, for the want of a better description, called SAFER, SAFER. And SAFER have 2 months in which to say, no, we don't want that garden for farming. I should add, in 18 years of selling houses, SAFER have never said, no, they want to buy any land from any property I've ever sold. However, if it happened to be a farm with hundreds of acres, they might step in. But for the average, garden or a few acres of land, they're not interested. It's just a bureaucratic exercise. Mm-hmm. So at the end of the 2 months, we come back, we sign on the iPad again, and then you're given the keys. Another important point, on the day of completion, I try to, and it's just my personal way of working, but we go to the property in the morning, because you must inspect the property before you go to sign at the notaire's. You have to check that obviously it's still standing, that they haven't painted the walls black, they haven't taken anything that they shouldn't have taken, i.e. some of the fixtures and fittings. And French used to take out fitted kitchens. They're not allowed to do that anymore. So we do a walk round of the property to make sure it's as it was when you viewed it. And we read the meters so that we can change the electric and the water for you. If there were to be an issue, and if we discovered that they'd filled their barn with all their rubbish and as a nice surprise for you, we would have time to tell the notaire, look, this has been left. And the notaire would withhold some of the funds from the seller to either allow them, make sure that they clear it within, say, 5 days, for example, or to give you the extra money for you to clear it if necessary for the inconvenience. So, but if you haven't done that walk around in the morning and then you go to the house after you've signed and it's full of rubbish, it's nothing you can do about it because you haven't checked. Yeah. Okay, so it's imperative that you do that, whoever you buy from. So we generally do that in the mornings. We do all of the meter readings. We give you the numbers for like the electric people, the EDF. They have an English speaking helpline. So if ever you do have problems with your electrics, you haven't got to worry. Generally, then we'll go and have some lunch somewhere because we're making a nice day, a nice, happy day. So we'll go and have
celebratory.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We'll go to the notaires at 2:00. Notaires will probably take about another hour to an hour and a half. Sign again on the iPad. The keys are yours. It's probably worth mentioning at this point. I don't do it very often, but if for any reason you couldn't be here or one of you couldn't be here for the completion, we can arrange a signing by proxy. The notaire would prepare a procuration that the notaire would sign on your behalf. It would have to be translated. It's normally 2 pages. It would be translated into English for you, but that would be your cost, normally a couple of €100, because the notaire will not let anybody sign if they haven't understood what they're signing.
Yeah.
So proxy is another option, but most people tend to come because they're excited and they want to be here doing it anyway.
Absolutely.
So you've got the keys and your new life starts.
Hooray. So just rewinding, so most clients, they won't come back to France. Well, they'll be there to view the property and they'll be there when the offer's made.
Yeah.
Do they then, do they need to come back to France before completion? I suppose for the exchange, they need to be there.
Yes.
Is that the only other time?
Yes.
And then at completion?
So quite often people leave France before they make their offer. So they might view, they'll get the ferry home, they'll probably talk about it on the ferry or when, talk to the family when they get home, and then they'll make their offer maybe 2 or 3 days later.
Right.
To me, it's really important that they come for the first signing because you get more information on that one than you do on the completion. The completion is really just a repeat of what's been said at the first signing.
Right.
As I mentioned previously, we have a series of what we call diagnostics. I believe in the UK, did you used to call it a HIP report or something a few years ago?
Home information pack, yeah.
Something
That's
like
right,
that.
yeah.
So these diagnostics include any asbestos on the property. Don't be surprised if it says that there could be asbestos in the fibro cement that holds the roof tiles on. There could be asbestos in one of the old roofs on the barn. If it's not degrading, it's not considered a problem over here. And so people just live with it, really. It's not a big issue. Lead, there will be a lead report. Quite often lead is in the paint on the outside windows. If you've got, old wooden windows with peeling paint, lead report, you mustn't lick them. It tastes nice apparently, but it's toxic. We have all of the electrics are inspected right down to every single socket, and the diagnostic people will always find fault somewhere with the electrics, however minor.
Yeah.
And I think they do that because they have to justify the cost to the seller of how much they've charged them for all these reports. So there's always something they'll pick up on.
Surveyors doing over here as well.
Yeah, any gas on site is checked, and that includes if you had a gas hob with a bottle, there's a tube that goes from the bottle to the hob, and that has a date on. And that date could have expired, which case they'll tell you you've got to change that. Then you've got, obviously, the energy efficiency. The energy efficiency has changed over the last couple of years. And if you have a low rating now, which to be fair, most old stone houses with oil central heating do have a lower rating, you have to have a secondary audit report that's now obligatory. That will tell the buyer how much the government thinks it might cost you to bring your old stone cottage from, say, an F or a G rating up to a B or C rating. And so it'll suggest things like you do insulation, you do double glazing, all the things that we know about, but it's all now in a report for you. Finally, the most important for any buyer is the septic tank report.
Yeah.
All of the properties out in the countryside will be on a septic tank. It will only have mains drainage if it's in the middle of a village or a town. Okay. The septic tank is the only obligation that you as a buyer have to make good when you buy the property. The other diagnostics are purely advisory only, and if it says that switch doesn't work, okay, that switch doesn't work, but there's no obligation on you to change it. The septic tank, if it doesn't conform to current regulations, as a buyer, you have 12 months in which to make it conform. Okay, it could be something minor. A lot of them are you have a secondary ventilation pipe and it might not quite be as tall as it needs to be, so you might need to a bit more pipe on. Or it could be something, you know, much bigger, so you could need a bigger budget to replace the septic tank completely. So I think it's really important when you're viewing or when you're going to make an offer, you know the condition of the septic tank so you can budget in for that if you need to do a lot of work to it. Okay,
that's a very good tip.
It's a really important one. Most of the septic tanks, even if they fail, it doesn't mean to say they don't work. It just means that every 3 years they change the regulations. So a septic tank that might have been put in 10 years ago is perfectly fine, but now they want this pipe a bit longer. So you're not buying something that doesn't work. You're not buying something that can't be used, but you're buying something that needs to be updated.
It needs tweaking.
Yeah, exactly. So it's not scary. It's just for you to be aware.
And I'm just conscious of the time, but we've got another minute. So the diagnostic report. So do you get that before signing the first contract exchange?
Yes.
So you can make your decision with all that information in front of you.
So we would always email the diagnostic reports to the seller to the buyer beforehand, and we would explain what's what, because obviously they are all in French. We always tell them if there's anything written in red, then that's a bit scary. But if there's nothing in red, that's not too bad. The seller has paid for all of the diagnostic reports and the septic tank report, but the notaire will also go through every single page of them during the first signing. So if there's anything we've missed or anything that's come up, you still have that 10-day cooling off period, that if you think, well, actually, I'm not keen about having that lead in that window now, you have got the option to change your mind.
That's quite a critical document, isn't it? That
totally. I think, yes.
And what are there any particular issues with regards to the surveys, the reports that you see quite frequently that might put buyers off or might just raise a red flag here and there? I mean, the septic tank sounds like an obvious one.
Septic tank is the main one. I think depending on where it is, a lot of people are scared of the asbestos, because obviously in the UK it's scary. From my understanding, there's 2 asbestoses, white and blue, and we've got the less scary one that was used in the cement to hold the roof tiles on, or an old outbuilding, an old barn with like a corrugated roof might have some in. But the diagnostic report will also say there's no problem with it, it's not degraded, you haven't got to do anything. If the report says different, then I would maybe question it.
It's about managing it, isn't it, rather than
totally
removing it with asbestos. Okay, we've got a question. We might have to make this the last question of the day because of the time, and it's from Marina, and she says, could you please specify the listed property details and regulations? So I guess, what are the implications of, do they have listed properties?
No, not like you have in the UK. We haven't.
Interesting.
No, so we have what they call places of historic interest, but you apply for that for your property. It's not automatically done like it is in the UK. If you're buying a property that is listed, it doesn't need an energy report, which, you know, but the rules are stricter than the UK on what you can do to it.
Okay. And there's a lot
So,
of old properties, aren't there?
you would have to have windows maybe with wood, not with PVC, and they'd have to be exactly the same as what you were replacing. There's a lot of things you wouldn't get planning permission for. However, the majority of properties, even a lot of the chateaus, they're not listed, so you've got much more free reign.
But if you buy a chateau that's not listed,
Yep.
Presumably there will still be regulations over what you can do to it. I mean, all of the
There
windows or the features, the original features, and you can't just rip down.
No, there's no rules at all, any
Okay.
more than any other property.
Interesting. Okay.
So
Well, that's
obviously,
good to
if
hear.
you're going to want to use a property as a business, then depending on what that business is, if it's Gîtes or B&B, then people will go and talk to the mayor and just automatically start up. If you were going to maybe use it for events or anything that might need change of use, then that would be like the UK. You would have to get permission. But we're very lucky here that most of the chateaus you can just go in, and you wouldn't want to rip out a lot of the original features. That would be really sad, but you can do pretty much what you want inside.
Yeah, that's why would you wouldn't buy a property like that and then change it, would you? So you're buying it because of the charm and the features.
I did have one.
Oh, really?
I had one for sale. It was beautiful. And they ripped out all this, what I would call oldie worldy kitchen, and put in a bright red
Strange.
Formica plastic one.
Yeah.
It was, shocking.
What can you say? Right, we have another good question just before the bell. So it's a good question. So I'm going to ask you this, and then I think we might have to wrap up just because
Okay.
it is ticking on. Mark asks if there's a serious problem shows up in the diagnostics report, or the septic tank or something else, can you use that as grounds to negotiate?
Yes.
Because you've obviously already agreed a price, but can you go back and say, or do they expect that to have been accounted for in their advertised price?
Generally,
It's a case of talking to you, really, isn't it?
if I'm doing a valuation, my valuation will be based on the fact that if I know the septic tank needs replacing because it's been in there 20 years, it's going to need some work doing to it. So I would value accordingly. However, it's always used as a point for negotiation. Well, we know the septic tank needs 10 grand spent on it. I'm going to knock 10 grand off the price. The diagnostics, not so much, because there's always going to be minor things with whatever. If there's anything major, then yes, we can negotiate on it. But whether the sellers would go for it or not is another matter. But in one word answer, yes, you can negotiate based on the findings of the various reports.
Yeah, just don't be too cheeky, I guess.
No, if you're too cheeky, then they don't take you seriously anymore, and they just say, well, I wouldn't sell to them now if they were the last person, because they're insulting. But we would guide you. We would say, well, I think if you were to make your offer here, I think we'd get it accepted. Excuse me. So we would guide you where we think you could pitch your offer successfully.
Yeah. So listen to your agent. That's what they're there for. That's a big part of their job. Is helping you secure the property for the best price, and then they know the market. So
we know the seller's circumstances. So we know, if they're hanging out for every last penny because for whatever reason, or if they're desperate and they need to move quickly.
Perfect. It's a shame because I'm enjoying this, and there's we've covered so much ground and some great information there, but we are 15 minutes over the original allotted time.
And we're not worried,
we need to leave. No, well, let's save some stuff back for another session. How about that?
No, certainly. We'll do it again.
Really
sometime.
interesting, Sheila. Thank you very much indeed for sharing all that information with us and answering our questions. Really appreciate you giving up the time. Did hear a bit of thunder in the background at one point, so
still going.
You're right.
I would like to
thank you, Sheila, very much. Yeah.
You've got my email address there on the screen. If you get any questions, just email me and I'll happily reply to them.
Brilliant. Very well, you heard it there. And likewise, you can come to your overseas home team for any other related France buying inquiries, relocation inquiries. But go straight to Sheila. Her email and contact details are there. Just to remind you, this has been recorded, so you can revisit the session on the Your Overseas Home YouTube page, or even send it on to someone else who you think might find it useful. Small request from us here at Your Overseas Home. If you found this webinar useful, we do appreciate reviews on the review website Trustpilot, and there's a link on the screen there for you now, which will take you to that. Otherwise, that's it from us. Good luck with your buying plans in northern France. If you're ready to go out there and you're ready to view properties, Sheila's waiting for your call. Make use of her and her services. Agence Newton, very experienced foreign buyer serving agency in France. Thank you again, Sheila, and goodbye, everyone.
Thank you, Richard. Thank you, everyone, for listening, and I look forward to hearing from you. Bye-bye.